Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to learn about the Fender Parallel Universe Volume 2 Jazz Strat. So this is a follow-up to their 2018 lineup that was called the Parallel Universe. Basically, every year Fender does a limited edition run of something, whether it be in the USA or Mexico lineup, and this year they brought it back to USA with Volume 2. And we've got 8 new interesting designs for 2020. I've already reviewed the Maverick Dorado, but today we get to talk about the Jazz Strat. And these things are retailing at $1,999, so we need to find out if this thing is worth it or not. First off, the name Jazz Strat. That kind of implies that you've mixed a Jazzmaster with a Stratocaster, and that's pretty much what they've done. There's 3 or 4 different combinations of the word Jazzmaster and Stratocaster that they should have took, and Jazz Strat has to be such a boring name. Come on, guys. So we've got Jazzmaster Stratocaster. So you could take the first part jazz and mix it with Ocaster for Jazzocaster or Jazzcaster. That's a pretty cool name. Or you could do it the opposite way. You've got Strat and Master. You can make it the Stratmaster. That's really cool. I like that name. But my favorite has to be if you just mix the ending of each of them. The Mastercaster. There we go. Come on, Fender. You would have sold so many more of these if you would have called it the Mastercaster. Oh, but anyways, this is just a Jazzmaster and a Stratocaster body. So what that means is you've got the Jazzmaster True Vintage 65 pickups. I'm actually a big fan of these things, so I'm looking forward to getting to hear this one. You've got the whole master volume, master tone setup that the Jazzmasters usually have. You've got the bridge of the modern era Jazzmasters, as well as the tremolo system. And most importantly is the neck and the Wispy Wind logo. I love that. And you even get the block inlays with the binding along the edges of the fretboard. So pretty much the only thing that's Stratocaster here is the body shape itself. Everything else is 100% Jazzmaster. So this is like geared towards people who love the look of a Jazzmaster, but not necessarily the offset body, and they want it in a Stratocaster. I mean, you could technically say that the headstock slightly reminds you of like a 70s Strat, but it's still slightly different. But that's kind of the way it feels to have this thing in your hands. It just reminds you of an older Stratocaster design. And then there's this one feature that is not actually on either of those guitars, the side output jack. You could say this has ultra Jazzmaster genes in it as well. That's pretty much the only explanation for that. It was certainly an interesting choice. I personally prefer side output jacked guitars, and not having it on the front of the pickguard or recessed into the body, it really did clean up the look of this guy. But besides just mixing those two guitars together, they tried to make it very aesthetically pleasing. They've given it this really sparkly finish. Like, I was not expecting that at first. The sparkles kind of caught me off guard, but it made me fall in love with this guitar. And they're calling this finish Mystic Surf Green. So it's definitely an eye catcher. And then you have a Deco Boom branded pickguard that's been pinstriped in a similar color right there. But we'll take a closer look at that here on the workbench in a minute. And we'll get rid of that ugly plastic that's over top of it so it can look its best. And pretty much the last special feature about these guys are the knobs. They have these vintage radio style knobs on them. So as far as my first impressions go on this thing, you know, I'm actually pretty happy with this. I was a little bit upset because at NAMM it looked like this had white pinstriping on the body, which would have made the Mastercaster so much better. But it just looks like that at certain angles because of that sparkle finish. It reflects the light. So you still kind of get that vibe. It's just not something you see looking straight on at this. But the color of this guitar matches with the case so beautifully. Because in case you missed my unboxing episode, they come with a mint green with black lining case. I mean, it's just a perfect match made in heaven, especially since the lining on the inside is also black. So it's just a super complementary pair. And pretty much my only complaint about this guitar so far is there's certain angles that this guitar just looks doofy as all get out. But then there's certain angles when you catch it, it's okay. And I think what makes this guitar not jive for everyone is the Jazzmaster pickups. But the problem is they're so large as compared to a regular Stratocaster single coils. So it kind of looks slightly out of place, like you've put 2 oversized humbuckers in it. So I could definitely see that affecting the sales of this particular model, but it's just kind of an interesting mashup. There's not a lot of history behind it, but let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the Mastercaster Jazz Strat, you can definitely see that Mystic Surf green finish a lot better here on the workbench. It's just so sparkly, like this is in your face sparkly. This is definitely an attention getter piece. But let's go ahead and look at all these parts. So I have always had great luck with the sounds and tones that I get out of the Pure Vintage 65 Jazzmaster pickups. So anything that comes with those, I'm instantly happy with, and I know I'm in for a treat. I haven't actually plugged this one in yet, but I have high hopes for these because that's exactly what these are. So your neck pickup's actually like a black color, and your bridge is like this gray color. Unfortunately, there is no markings on here, except for that little blue dot. And it looks like you get a little red dot on this one. But if somebody were to take these out of this, good luck ever identifying that this was made by Fender. But these are not noiseless. These are the regular ones. As far as pickup readings go, our bridge pickup is 6.57. The neck, whoa, that's strange, 8.35. And then the middle position, 3.71. But the way that these guys are mounting, they are using these foam blocks. They're pretty rigid, and then they screw in using those 4 holes. As far as our barcodes, it looks like it says Mystic Surf Green right there. And if we were to lift that up, I'm pretty sure that says Jazz, then Strat. And it looks like this one was made in mid-March. That's nice to see a date. I haven't seen that before. As far as the rest of the cavities go, we just have another barcode right there. You have your little route right there for your 3-way toggle, and this is just the rest of that. But now let's take a look at this pickguard. This is super interesting. So I've got what they're considering an ivory color with the pinstriping job of a similar Mystic Surf green. But how do they make this? So it appears we have some sort of clear layer over top of it, and then on the back, look at this. So what they've done is they probably cut this out on a CNC machine or something similar, and then they have it route a channel all along here. And what that's doing is it's cutting through the ivory back plate, just enough to expose that clear layer, and then they take a spray painter and paint around the edges, and that's what makes it so you can see that blue finish over top of that, and it looks super clean. That is a nice design right here, and it is an official Deco Boom product. So if you don't know what Deco Boom is, I actually had one of their pickguards once before on a parts caster that Sarah Ray had painted, and they just kind of have some interesting designs, so it's pretty nice to see Fender partner up with those guys for something as beautiful as this. Now this particular design is not listed on their website. Yeah, you might be able to custom order your own and make a parts caster version of this guitar, but I'll just let you guys contact them. I'm sure that's a slight gray area. But what I found interesting here is that this barcode actually says it's for an American Ultra Stratocaster. So I'm guessing that's just the wiring assembly. They just borrowed from that but didn't have the output jack or the other volume pot, I guess. But they do have that shielding tape right there, and it's a regular 3-way toggle switch, except for it's a little bit bulkier in feel as compared to most 3-way toggles. It's a nice feeling. Maybe it's just this big switch tip that makes it feel more substantial, but it is a metal switch tip. Then your pot's just secured to the front with 1 washer. And it looks like we're running 500K pots here, and I believe this is the treble bleed that Fender's talking about that they put in the circuit. So it's a pretty simple layout, and then the thing that you don't normally see in a Stratocaster body is they route it out right there to put the football-style output jack. But you're going to notice, hey, where did my knobs go? I took them off so we could take a closer look. So Fender calls these the vintage radio knobs. I guess maybe it's styled after a vintage radio. I honestly haven't dealt with too many of those, but it feels like it's an aluminum plate like right over top of that, and you'll notice that these knobs only go to 9. So take that, Spinal Tap. This is a extra quiet guitar. But they're kind of stylized after a witch hat knob. You've got the black grippers right here, and then you've got the reflective shiny surfaces, and the back is just the black plastic. I'm not sure, does it fit the vibe of this guitar or does it not? I guess it's kind of going for a vintage Art Deco style, so maybe it has something to do with that. The shininess definitely complements the finish though. And these guys secure to the pot shaft just by this little screw right there. Moving on here, they borrowed the bridge from the American Pro Jazzmaster. I think this originally came from the Mustang. You've got the 6-barrel saddles right there. That just mounts into the body with 2 holes, and they have these plastic washers there so it doesn't move around. And here's what the route looks like for the Jazzmaster tremolo style. You can see you've got your grounding wire right there. And the unit itself, it just looks like this. I've gone over how these things work enough times. You guys can check out my other Jazzmaster videos if you want to learn more on that. Now that we got it all put back together, the other thing about this finish is it's a nitro finish, so that's kind of what Gibson uses on everything, and that means this will age over time. I don't know if that was a good decision or not. I mean, it's a premium feature whenever Fender does that, but sparkle finishes have a tendency to finish check quite a bit. At least in the Gibson world, I don't think they've ever been able to figure out sparkle finishes. So that also means this could yellow over time, so green plus yellow equals, I guess, just kind of a darker green. So these might actually look pretty cool when they age, because this will turn a darker color, but the pickguard might not necessarily age the same way, so you could get a color variation, because this is the only color you can choose on these guys. If you don't like Mystic Surf Green, you're either going to have to refinish one of these, or as I was saying earlier, build your own parts caster version of this guitar. But these guys are utilizing an alder body. And as far as the trem bar itself, it utilizes the screw-in style, not the pop-in style. Well, here we go. Moving on to the neck. We have a rosewood fretboard, but I'm really happy with how dark this is. I mean, it was in pretty good shape even before I conditioned it, but that darkened it up even a little bit more. But you have these acrylic plastic inlays in here. But I really like this first fret one. I like how they added that black streaking to it. The other ones, it has a little bit of that going on, but not quite as extreme. But as far as, you know, the acrylic inlays go, these things actually look pretty good in comparison with the body. But we've got 22 frets on here. It utilizes a 9.5-inch radius and the 25.5-inch scale length. And as far as fret size, it says they're using the medium jumbos. But the neck also has the binding along the edges of the fretboard as well, so that's not something you normally find on a Stratocaster styled shape. As far as build quality goes, I think they actually did pretty good on this guitar. I have yet to see something that I feel that I need to point out, except for one thing. I think they kind of messed up on the headstock a little bit. Do you see what I'm going to point out? When they masked off for the headstock, they did not get that masking tape perfectly lined up here, so it kind of goes at a slight angle. And the only reason why I noticed it is I was like, is the fretboard longer there? No, it's just because the paint got at an angle. So that's a small thing that Fender could work on, because it's an attention to detail thing. I mean, you're not going to notice it all the time, but when you're really looking for it, that's when you're going to go, oh, that bugs me, that bugs me. And they are utilizing a bone nut. I went ahead and added some graphite in there too. But let's see here. As far as neck specs go, our nut width is 1.69 inches, and up at the 12th, it looks like we're rocking 2.03, so that's fairly standard. First fret neck depth, 0.82, and then we get up to 0.91 at the 12th. And Fender calls this neck profile the medium C, so you can see definitely a C shape at that first fret, and then it just gets a little bit wider once you go up to the 12th. So a nice neck if you like the slim stuff. Moving on to the face of the headstock, you can see you've got your truss rod adjustment right there, single string tree, and I just love this headstock. The Mystic Surf Green finish, how it's so sparkly, and on top of that you get the wispy winds around the Fender logo. That's what I call them. Is there actually an official name for that? I just call them wispy winds because that's what it looks like. But take a look at these tuners. I actually really appreciate the style of tuner they decided to use. This is the vintage style where you put the string down and then you wind them around. Fender calls this the classic gear style tuners. We'll see them on the back. I love the way that they say nothing. You'll see that in a minute. One other very small thing I guess we could talk about is they either need to choose to completely mask off the binding or let it show, because here we kind of have a half and half. But that's just very minor cosmetic stuff. As far as actually painting the face of the headstock, they did a pretty good job on this one. Although maybe right there they should have did a little bit more. But that's really just me looking for stuff. Let's go ahead and flip it over to the back side here. What do we got going on? Oh, it's a Stratocaster body that is a hardtail that has nothing going on for it. So not too much to talk about here, except for once again we can see that mystic green finish. And hey, we've seen everything else on this guitar, so we might as well take the output jack out. So it just looks like a standard route right there, straight through the body. Nothing too crazy. But the strap buttons, am I going crazy? Is that a non-regular strap button for Fender? It might just be because it's been a while since I've looked at a Fender strap button, but that seems slightly different. It has like a dome, and then you can kind of see what I'm talking about right there. But typical Strat contour right there, 4-style bolt-on neck. It would have been nice if they could have gave this thing like the ultra heel joint. And as far as the neck goes, it's one-piece maple with your standard walnut skunk stripe, but they chose the gloss finish. Now, it doesn't feel like super gloss. It's not like the goopy stuff, so it's not too bad, but I probably would have preferred the satin finish just for playability. But when you have a super sparkly guitar, I think it would have been cool if they just would have finished the neck in that too, because I think that would make that really unique. I mean, does Fender ever paint their necks? Again, I'm not the biggest Fender historian, so I guess that could have been something that would make this interesting. but this is actually an official 2020 model right here, made in Corona, California. And here's what I was talking about. I love that they say nothing. That has such a cool vintage vibe to it. And this neck actually has a little bit of figuring to it. I mean, nothing to really write home about, but a little bit of flame figuring never hurt anyone. And the neck plate reads Fender Parallel Universe. All said and done though, this thing weighs 7 pounds, 10.9 ounces. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this thing sounds. What are my final thoughts on the Parallel Universe Volume 2 Jazz Strat? I've got to say this one definitely met my expectations for this guitar. It was good and I enjoyed it. It's all about these pure vintage 65 pickups. I think I just like these pickups. Anything that you put these things in, I'm always a fan of, because that neck pickup on the clean tones, it's just so fat and juicy, you can't help but love it. Now in my opinion, the bridge pickup in this particular one was a little bit too bitey, so I guess you could probably take that down or maybe roll the tone down to kind of help tame that. But once you throw it on the dirty channel, man, you don't want to change anything about this guitar. It's just so crunchy. That super over brightness in the clean channel, it makes it super clear in the distorted channel, so it's perfect for that. And the neck pickup overdriven also works pretty well. So as far as the tones go, this is definitely a big win in my book. But as far as quality control goes on this one, we had some minor paint mishaps. I'm noticing that the E string, it sounds pinched at the nut. It still rings and plays okay, but it just doesn't seem to ring out as long as the other notes. And speaking of this trem, it's so noisy. And that's not even actually using it. And I was getting a lot of sympathetic vibrations on this thing. I think you can hear that through in the recording as well. I think that's part of the charm of a Jazzmaster. I'm sure you could put like a string mute on here if that really annoyed you. Yeah, but other than that, they did a great job. So I think at $2,000, I think these are fair. It's the Parallel Universe version 2s that are like $2,500 when I start going, is it really worth it? Because, you know, limited edition, it's got some cool stuff going for it. Yeah, you could build your own parts caster a lot cheaper, but then it will not be a limited edition collectible in the future. But I think the biggest comparison here is in 2018, they did this exact same thing, but in a different way with a Telecaster. And that one was called the Jazz Tele. That's probably why they call this one the Jazz Strat too. That way it's kind of a pair. They're not messing up all the names. So I get why they called it what it was, but how does it compare? Because these were both at brand new prices, the same price, $1,999. So what does this one have over that? It is super fancy. I mean, look at all these fancy appointments that they did to this guy. I mean, it's got the sparkle finish, you got the Art Deco pickguard, you've got the binding on the neck, you've got the fancy block inlays, even the matching headstock color. I mean, this is an infinitely more attractive guitar if you're going for super flashy. But on the other hand, the Jazz Teles, what made me love those things is they were just so basic. They had a plain finish to them. It was like surf green, I think, and a sunburst color. And there's a few other spec differences, like those actually have the deep C neck profile instead of the slim C, and they have ash bodies. So in that aspect, you could own both of those guitars in your collection and still have something a little bit different. But if I just had to choose one, I would honestly go with the Jazz Tele because they're a little bit more of a workhorse. So if you're just looking for something to play, you don't need something flashy to get people's attention on stage. I think that's what you'd be better off with because it's something about that Telecaster shape and how plain it was. You weren't really afraid to really dig into that guitar. This one, it's so pretty and sparkly, you don't want to get all that wear and tear on it. And honestly, you can still pick up the Jazz Teles brand new at really good reduced rates currently, not even on the used market. We're talking new old stock from 2018. But if you like fancy stuff or you just like the Stratocaster body shape better, because honestly, I will say this did feel a little bit more comfortable to play, but the tones were all very similar. So those are just some things to think about if you're comparing the two. So let's go ahead and move on to a blacklight test. I'd say things are looking pretty good right here. Nothing too crazy going on. It's a brand new guitar. It's not gonna glow that much anyways, but we do have some light glowing here. Well, that's the other thing about this guitar. It's got a slight staticness to it because it's like brand new rubbing against stuff. So that stuff you see glowing right here, that's just a dust. But our neck does glow a little bit here. But let's go ahead and take a look at that really cool case. All right, the original case for these. Last time I said it looked like mint chocolate chip ice cream and I got myself so worked up, I almost went to the store and bought some. But you have two locking latches on either side and you have a middle clasp. Typical black handle, Fender logo, everything's looking good here, but the interior on this one is black. Now I was excited and dismayed at the same time to see that Fender is offering these cases separately, but they're different. Only the Parallel Universe ones get the black interior. The other ones kind of have like a matching green color. They also have a Sonic Blue version that also has the blue interior. We'll have to see if any of these other ones get those blue cases, but only time will tell on that. But the interior is kind of a nice crushed velvet-like feel. I would love to have a backdrop that looks like this because in the B-roll shots, it almost just completely disappears. But you're probably saying, hey, where's my compartment? It's right here. You just kind of have to know that it's there. I don't really see a pull tab or anything. But you can see you get some tags, silica packets, your setup tools, Fender sticker, Fender startup guide, and most importantly, your certificate of authenticity. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of my reviewed Jazz Strat, you can check out that link in the description, which will take you to the Reverb for sale page. I gotta sell this one so I can buy the other ones, because that's the name of the game. Document them all. Thank you, Troglodytes, for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Which one do you guys think will come out next? Take care.